Royals fans, welcome back in. I'm pleased to be joined by the head scout of the Victoria Royals, Tanner McCall. Tanner, a very big week upcoming for yourself, the scouting staff, everyone involved in the hockey operations team. Of course, 2 big days ahead: the US import draft taking place on Wednesday and the WHL prospects draft taking place on Thursday. Walk me through. How are you feeling?
I'm excited. I'm very excited. Obviously, since the season's been over, we're kind of putting our eyes on the future of the franchise, and we're excited to get some guys in the Royal system that hopefully can come in and make big impacts for the team. So it's been a lot of work. There's been a lot of travel, but now that it's all the year-end cups have been wrapped up, we're just trying to make sure we got them in the right order. And outside of that, it's out of our control. We're just going to pick when we pick and make sure we're finding the best guys to be the future of the team.
Yeah, and obviously an abundance of picks as of right now for the Royals, and then that's something to look forward to in itself. But when you just look at overall how many picks you guys have available, draft capital is one thing, but making sure to land on the picks, of course, that's another entirely different thing. So when you put it like that, how difficult is it just making sure when you're drafting the 14-year-old players and you have that much available that you're landing on these picks?
Yeah, well, that's like you say, there's the pressure that comes with it, but the whole thing is making sure we're finding players that we project to be key pieces in the lineup. And obviously, some will play at 16, some will play at 17, some will hopefully play their entire career for the Royals. So you got to kind of begin with the end in mind and make sure we're finding the right people to plug into the spots that we're going to need them to play in. So having all these picks, like we got 7 in the top 79, sure it's going to make for a busy morning once we kind of get things rolling. But it's also nice to have, lots of assets, as you mentioned, to give us some flexibility, whether we could put some things together and trade up, or we could explore trading down, or we can move picks to the future. So it's kind of nice to have the ultimate flexibility. And I'm just really excited to be on the clock on Thursday and start getting some names put down. And it's been a lot of work, but we're excited, and hopefully there's a nice big payoff for having all these picks. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned it there, obviously, the scouting side of things, that usually brings a lot of traveling into the mix. So as the WHL season kind of nears the completion, there's also a lot of other events that you guys would be going to. What can you tell us about the events that you guys got to go to and just watch certain players try and pick and see where they're at?
Well, the scouting season starts to kind of wrap up. I wouldn't say wrap up, but you starting kind of get looking on what's coming down the pipe starting in February. Saskatchewan is the first province to host their year-end event, so they put the top 80 guys together, and they have a 3-day event out in Belgoni in February. And then we move quickly into the Sports School Championships in Penticton in March, which is always a big event on the calendar. Just lots of those top teams in that Sports School Prep League are all there in their playdowns, and we were treated to an exceptional final. Seeing Edge and NAX play was probably one of the best games I've seen live all year. We got a little bit overtime and a late tying goal, so you get to see those guys with their club teams for the last time in Penticton, and then you move right into the finishing events for the end of the year in Cups. And Manitoba comes up next, so spent a weekend in Winnipeg watching the top guys in Manitoba. And we ended up with the weekend off, and then we went to Salmon Arm for the BC Cup. We had 8 teams of guys there, so you got a mix of the sports school kids, plus we have the guys that are just playing there with their regional teams. So we got a nice mix there, and then kind of the final one to put it all together is the Alberta Cup, which was in Red Deer this year, and lots of good hockey players there. There's a pretty good contingent of players in Alberta, so that would have been 2 weekends back. So we've been trying to get game reports done and just making sure we have all our all the conversations we need to have had, and we're just trying to piece it all together. And like I say, this year it's been a little different with the week off in between Alberta Cup and the draft. Usually wrap up the Alberta Cup on Sunday, and the draft is on Wednesday. So this year there was an added week in there, which has been nice to just give it all a little bit more time to breathe and air out a little bit, and just making sure we got our guys in the right order. We're excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and with all that being said, obviously a lot of events, a lot of places you guys are taking a look at, but you guys have a great scouting staff as well that spreads all across Western Canada and into the States as well. So how closely are you and General Manager Jake Heisinger working with these guys, and how often are you having these conversations with them, just seeing what they see?
Well, we've been working on it all year. Like it kind of sneaks up at you, sneaks up on you at the end of it. You can't leave all of it till the end. So we've been working with the regional guys since the puck dropped on the season back in September to make sure that we've been working on our lists all season long and making sure that when we're at these events and we're seeing these teams play that, we're making sure guys are in the right order and getting our reports in and chipping away, doing our homework, talking to families and talking to coaches and just kind of making sure everything's set. So at the end, with all these year-end events, we're just trying to bring it all together, and it becomes more about the overall list, making sure we're kind of blending all the provinces together. But the area guys have been instrumental all season long, making sure that we have guys in the right order in each region, and we're just kind of, like I say, trying to bring it all together here and talking about different scenarios. And I know Jake's busy on the phone. There's always a million different things going on, and with us picking at 8, obviously we're going to have to wait a while on Thursday to see how it shakes out. But I think we're getting to the point where we're going to have a pretty good feel for a handful of guys that should be there. So we're talking about potential scenarios and just making sure that we're ready to go in the first round. And you say with the 7 picks in the top 79, we're going to be busy. So we kind of have to have these conversations early on. So talk about just all the various potential outcomes and how it could shake out, and trying to do a little bit of a prediction as to how things are going to go ahead of us, but that's completely out of our control. So it's going to be nice come Thursday to just start calling some names. And at the end of the day, it's just hockey players and hockey scouts, so everybody's going to be excited to get things rolling. And it should be an exciting time for the franchise. We're pretty pumped.
And something I'm really curious about as well, and you mentioned it there a couple times, 7 picks in the first 79 is a remarkable feat for you guys to have, and a lot of options for you guys there. My question, I guess, is weighing the option of picking the best player available and doing positional needs. How much do you guys weigh those two things together? Does the fact having 7 picks in the first 79 maybe change the idea of picking a player based on position, or is it just something that you're always weighing between the two?
Well, to the top of the draft, you have to focus on the best players available when you pick. Like I said before, we're focused on projection. We're trying to find guys that can play key roles at the top of our lineup. So it's part of the discussion about the positional value, centers and wingers and defensemen and goaltenders. But usually when it comes down to it, the overall list plays the biggest part in the top couple rounds. But you have to keep it in mind that you definitely need to make sure you have some balance, and
Yeah.
you have to fill all of these roles and all of these positions. So at a certain point, you have to keep in mind we're going to need a little bit of everything. So that'll be a focus for us going in. But at the same time, when you're picking at the top of the draft, those players are probably a little bit easier to project. So, if the two names that we pick in the first round, we believe those guys will be able to play in the Western Hockey League for sure, and they're going to be able to step in pretty early and make an impact. As you get a little deeper in the draft, it's a little bit of a longer projection, and some of these guys might need a little more time, and there might be a little more risk involved that way. So it's a balancing act. You're trying to make sure you're taking the best players available when it comes time for you to select, but at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're making sure that you're checking off all those boxes. You can't leave, really light on defensemen, or, the other thing that happens is you can't be picking 9 forwards because you're not probably going to have 9 forwards in one age group playing in your lineup. So you kind of have to weigh all these things, and there's going to be picks that you make that for whatever reason things don't work out. And like you said, these are 14, 15-year-old kids. So some of these projections are a couple years down the road, but we're gonna pick the best players available, and at the same time, we're gonna make sure that we have a positional balance because we're gonna need to fill all these roles.
And then after the draft, so the guys that we end up taking a bunch of players and you move on to the next stage. What does that next stage look like for these players? Are you having conversations with them as a team throughout the entire summer, looking to the next year, or is it kind of you make the pick and you're having those initial conversations and kind of just letting them work on their games over the summer?
No, there'll be conversations with kids and families right on draft day, and there'll be communication right after the draft. And there lots of people have lots of questions, and we're trying to get expectations laid out for the kids and the families. And obviously, I think training camps way out there, but it's really not that far.
Yeah.
And we're going to be just making sure guys are comfortable with what expectations are of them through the organization. And it's a matter of building relationships now that, they're officially a part of the club and officially a part of our future. So lots of conversations, lots of connections. There'll be communication with players as to where we see areas for development, and there'll be talk of what their plans are for training over the summer. And I think that's part of this that maybe goes unmentioned, but is really key in this is, you have your name called during the draft, but it's what happens after that. It's your plan for development. It's just making sure the bulk of these kids are not going to be ready to go. They right off the bat, they're going to need a couple years to develop and a couple years to physically grow, and they change so much in the next couple of years. So it's just important that everybody's on the same page, and it's definitely it becomes about development and making sure guys are comfortable with the club. And obviously, we get past the draft, the next thing we start thinking about is training camp, and it's going to be fun to see these guys wearing our colors and trying to slot themselves into the roster and into the future rosters. And it's going to be competitive. The kids have to realize it doesn't matter if you're a first or a second or a fifth or an eighth. Like, everybody, if you're good enough, you're going to get a chance to play, and there's some jockeying that will go on amongst the prospect group as to who's going to get the opportunities to develop and to play. And it's about competition, and that's, I think, maybe the best part of us having all these picks. We talked about having 7 in the top 79, but we got some later picks too. So there's going to be lots of players added to the protected list, and there's not going to be room for everybody. So the players have to be ready to take that next step themselves and make sure that they're putting in the work off the ice, in the gym. Guys will be working with skating coaches and skills coaches and all that sort of thing. So it's interesting. The gears kind of change a little bit and things switch up, but at the end of the day, it's just hockey, and the kids have to start getting ready to take the next step.
And we've talked a lot about the WHL prospects draft. Of course, that's taking place on Thursday, but the draft prior on Wednesday, the U.S. import draft, a 2-round draft. You guys will be picking 8th and 30th. What can you tell me about that draft when you guys are looking at that? How different is it when you're doing scouting compared to players that would go in the U.S. import draft versus guys that would go in the WHL prospects draft?
Well, it's a little bit different. As you mentioned, we talked about earlier the year-end cups for all the Western Canadian kids. There might not be as many viewings of the American kids, but there are opportunities throughout the season to see them playing at various large tournaments. They come up our way, and we get our eyes on them. So you're projecting them and writing your reports and working on a little bit of a list to get those guys put together. But there's also another part of it where you're trying to make sure that the guys that you're interested in taking are actually interested to come up and play in the league. So there's a bit of a balancing act there, but if you say with us picking as high as we are, there should be an opportunity to hopefully, find some guys that not only can play, but they're interested in the league, and hopefully they can make an impact on the roster. Like last year, obviously team took Cruz there, and Cruz had a pretty good year at Rink Kelowna, and he's going to have to take another step next year, and he should. And we got an American on the roster, so it seems that across the league there seems to be more and more of the American kids coming up and playing in the league, and that's kind of the expected outcome of adding this new draft. So I think each year it seems to kind of grow, and there's more and more traction. We're seeing more and more of these kids come up and play in the league, and it's actually interesting when you get into it and start doing some backstories and doing a bit of homework, how many of these kids are playing for Western Canadian guys, that were playing minor pro or ended up down in California or Texas, and now they're running these AAA programs. And these guys know a lot about the Western Hockey League, and many played. And there's lots of weird, interesting little connections, and it's just nice to see more and more American kids coming up and playing in the league, because it just helps elevate the overall competitiveness of the league. And it's about having the best players. So if we can find a guy or two in that draft that can come in and make an impact for us, it just makes things even easier and get us closer and closer to where we're trying to get to.
Awesome. And I just have one more question for you, going back to the WHL prospects draft. Two impressive names when you look back. The last time the Royals picked eighth overall, it was Tyler Soy, and the last time they picked 18th was Scott Walford. Two guys that legacy players, I guess you could say, for the Royals. So, with all that being said, how much is it when you're looking at this? We've talked about the age of these guys, 14, but when you're saying you're picked eighth overall, to not have those, obviously the expectations are there, but for there not just to be an abundance of pressure on them, how tough is it just to walk that line of knowing that the expectations are up here, but also not wanting to put too much pressure on them?
Well, it's important. I think the kids understand the gravity of it all, and you know, it's nice when you, like you just mentioned, you bring up some names from the past, whether they went at 8 or whether they went at 18, or know whether they were somewhere in the middle or guys that even came later. Everybody might take a little bit of a different path, but you're still expecting an impact wherever they go. And I think the best part for the kids that we take this year is, there's some key pieces ahead of them. So they don't have to come in day one and have all the responsibility in the world dumped on them. Like, this year we got a nice taste of what Keaton Bearhoff is going to bring in the Western Hockey League. And obviously he got in a bunch of games with us and was key in the playoffs. So, there are some other guys already in the system that, are going to be a year ahead and 1 year more comfortable and ready to make an impact so that guys can get opportunities for when they're ready for the opportunities. So that's kind of part of it. But there's some nice pieces in the two age groups above. Obviously, Orioles fans would have saw the impact that Cole Reshny gave us this year. So Cole's going to be locking down that spot on the top line here for the next couple of years. So these kids will come in, and as they're ready, their responsibilities will grow as they develop, and it's just about getting better. Once your name gets called, it's just about doing what it takes to get better, and it'll be clearly laid out for the kids what the next steps need to be. And obviously, when you end up putting on the Royals jersey full time, the coaching staff is going to do a wonderful job of these guys, and hopefully they can become the players that we believe they can become based on the projections we've given them coming into the draft here this week.
Awesome, Tanner. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, but we're wishing you best luck in the drafts, and I know Royals fans will be paying close attention.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to it. The whole staff is. So thanks a lot, Tony. It's great.